if you want success in this unit, you got to know how to factor. So maybe you want to come in for extra help along with midterm review on how to factor, because if this is not something we're just going to do today and we're done with it. All right, we need to be able to factor on day 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, not just day 1. All right, let's hop into this. Let's see what we remember from last year. In this unit, we're going to be dealing with proportions a lot. Proportions. I write this down, and you don't have to write this down here. I write this. A lot of you are going to say that's a fraction. And you're correct. It's 3/4. It's a fraction. But it's also called a ratio of 3 to 4 with those colons in between. 3 to 4. It's called a ratio as well. You guys have called it a fraction all your life, which is true. Now, if I set 2 ratio, there's 6/12. There's a ratio. 1/2, if I set them equal to each other, now I've created what's called a proportion, which I hopefully you guys have seen. If not last year, definitely in the middle school. And what I need to do today with you is, how do we solve those? Like if you take a look at number 1, what value of n is going to make this ratio proportion true? You guys remember from middle school, or maybe last year you did a couple of these, maybe? I don't know if it's last year. I cross multiply. Okay, what's it mean to cross multiply? Here we go. So I cross bottom and a top. Cross them up, multiply. So 5n. And then I cross multiply the other two. 2 and 35 to get 70. And then when I cross multiply each, what do I do with them? What do I do with the 2? You set them equal, just like the proportion was. And now it's on you guys, all right, to solve that. And this is about as easy as it's going to be today. So n is equal to 14. So that's what we're doing today, and this entire unit is taking a proportion, solving it by cross multiplying, but we're going to have some trouble in a minute. So let's do number 2 here. I cross multiply, get 3x, right, on one side. Okay, be careful now. When you take the 2 and the x plus 1, you have to multiply them, which means distributing the 2 all the way through. I don't want to just see 2x plus 1. I got to distribute the 2 all the way through. So make sure we are aware of that. So you should have 2x, not plus 1, but plus 2. And then solve it up. So x equals 2. All right, those are your good old middle school days. Now it's time to go back to Algebra 1 last year. You take a look at 3, some of you may argue with me, that's not a proportion. The x plus 6 is just by itself. True, I don't need to write it. What's it over? It's over 1, yeah. So now that when you put it over 1, oh, now that looks like a proportion. And here we go reviewing from last year. I get 13 when I cross multiply the one way, no big deal there, right? All right, now here we go. X plus 6 and x minus 6 need to be multiplied. So I'm going to slow this train down right now and review how to multiply those two. So 13 equals. All right, so last year, anybody have a teacher that used the term FOIL last year? Good, because I can't stand that term. How about double distribute? Maybe. Okay, if not, no big deal. I don't know maybe what term you gave to it. We're going to take this x, distribute it all the way through. And then we're going to take the 6 and distribute it as well. That's where the double distribute comes from. So ready? Slow it down. X times x. If you're going to say 2x, please leave immediately. X squared. Now you got to go again. X times negative 6. Negative. Okay, is everyone good there? Next up, this is why I said double. You got to do it twice. Now you distribute the 6. So 6 and x. give me 6x. And then the final two, 6 and -6. So I attach a -36 at the end. Questions there on how I did that before I go on to the next step? You got to do it 4 times. You just can't do the first 2 and the last 2. All right, now combine your like terms. What's going to happen here with the -6x and the +6x? See ya, they're gone. All right, they're gone. That won't happen all the time, but in this case it does. So I have 13 equals x squared, nothing in the middle, minus 36. All right, where are you guys going from here now? Got to solve for x, remember. What's our next move to get x by itself? Add 36, yep. And move the 36 over. So go ahead, everyone, add 36. Nice little number over there, huh? X squared equals 49. And then how do I get that 2 out of there on the exponent? Square root both sides. Yep, square root. Hey, I don't know what happened yesterday with some of you using Pythagorean theorem. You cannot square root until the x squared's by itself. I can't square root up here. All right, you have to have this by itself before you square root. All right, that was some new algebra some of you created on that test yesterday. All right, many of you are going to say x equals 7, and you're correct, but I only can give you half credit. 7 is correct. That's a good one. But when you take the square root, aren't you left with the positive version and the negative version? And usually, including me this year, usually I never bring that up because we're dealing with a diagram. And you guys know, can you have a negative side length? Nope, you can't have a negative angle. So that's why I never brought up the negative answer. But hey, anybody see a diagram here? I don't see it either. So we got to have both answers here. There's no rejecting an answer. Got to have both when I take the square root, plus or minus 7. All right, any issues here? Because you got to buckle up now. It's not going to get pretty. Whew, bad memories might be coming home here. Please don't start sweating. If you need tissues for the tears, they're in the back near the sharpener. All right. All right, cross multiply. Here we go, cross multiply. X times x minus 2 is going to get multiplied. And I'm going to set that equal to 5 times x plus 6. Go ahead, do your distribution for me. Do your distribution. X squared minus 2x equals 5x plus 30. All right, here we go, kids. Let's see. We need to dust some of our techniques off. Maybe figure out we need some extra help with this. This is not going to be a problem. This is not going to be a problem like the last one where we square root something at the end. Now, how do I know that, and how are you going to know that? If you look at the last problem we did, do you see it was just x squared, and that's all I had was an x squared. There's nothing else with an x with it. It's just x squared, and that was it. Ooh, what do I have this time, though? An x squared and an x. So that tells me if it's not x squared by itself, I can't square root. Instead, we're going to factor this beast. All right, we are going to factor here. So let's review how to factor. We're not factoring a darn thing yet. I hate to break it to you. We're not ready. And that doesn't, I'm not saying you're not ready because you can't do it, but in this problem right now, we're not ready to factor. You can't factor anything unless one side equals 0. Remember that, right? Yeah, one side's got to be equal to 0. And I prefer, you guys, whatever's squared is positive. So I'm going to move over this side here to get it equal to 0. All right, because I always like whatever's squared to be positive. All right, help me out. How do I move that 5x over? How's that 5x getting to the other side? being subtracted, right? So x squared stays. What's going to happen here now? Negative 2x and negative 5x. I can combine those to get negative 7x. The 30's got to get moved over. How? Subtract over 30. So now it becomes negative 30 on this side, equal to 0. So it's got to be equal to 0 first. All right, here we go. Let's play a little. I don't know how you did it last year. Let's play a little game now. Time to factor. First two spots have to be x and x to give you x squared, right? All right, now you guys are going to take over. I'm going to need two numbers that do the following. They need to multiply to your last number, which is usually called your C value, right? They need to multiply to that C value. And at the same time, those two numbers need to add to your middle number, aka your B value. So it's got to multiply to negative 30, but at the same time add to negative 7. And I don't know what tricks, I've seen this X business before. I don't know what you learned last year. Get the job done. All right, two numbers that multiply to negative 30, but will add to negative 7. I haven't taught Algebra 1 in years, but when I did, I always said, worry about the numbers that multiply first. So in your mind or in your calculator, you're thinking about numbers that multiply to 30. So I go 1 and 30, right? That's never, ever going to give me a 7. So now I keep going. 2 and 15, right? Give me 30. No way am I getting a 7 when I combine those. All right? I start thinking about other values. Oh, 5 and 6 maybe were the first pair that came to mind. But there's no way you're getting a 7 from those. And purposely, I left the last pair off, which will do the trick, which is, what's another pair that multiplies to 30 that you can get a 7 from?
Negative
10 and 3, right? You can get a 7 from that with proper signs. 10 and 3 multiply to 30. But now you need it to add to negative 7, though. So now you got to put the correct signs in front. It needs to add to a negative 7. So plus, plus, minus, minus, opposites. And we're looking at what? Negative 10 and positive 3. And we're almost done. Because remember, we're solving for x, right? We're solving for x. Oh, no, I don't want to double distribute because then I'm just going backwards. I'm going to go to here. Remember, I'm solving for x. I'm solving for x. So now I take these two parentheses and set them equal to 0. So I take x minus 10, set it equal to 0, and I take x plus 3, set it equal to 0. I don't want to multiply again because then I'm just going backwards. So whatever's in the parentheses, I set equal to 0. And now you find what your two answers are. So it should be x equals 10 as one answer, and the other answer, x equals negative 3. And let me just squash your dreams right now for anybody that's thinking about this. Why am I doing all this? I'm just going to take the original problem and go over to the equations and just put it in and I'll get the answer. Yeah, go ahead. You won't get any credit from me. All right, I need to see your work. If you want to use this to check your final answer, sure. But you're looking at right now what the work you need to show for full credit. Okay, if you just put x equals 10 and x equals negative 3 with no work, you're not going to get any credit anytime in here. All right, but you can certainly check it using your calculator. I'm going to walk around. I'd like you to do numbers 2 and 3 right now. Do not do number 4. Numbers 2 and 3. Go ahead. Cross multiply, double distribute, get it equal to 0, and factor. Do not do number 4, please. Try to do this on your own, please. This is not a group exercise. I want to see you try to do it on your own. On number 2, you should be trying to factor x squared plus x minus 2 when you set it equal to 12. Sorry, minus 12 when you set it equal to 0. So hopefully that's what you got. If not, probably something went wrong in your double distribution. And I'll let you factor that. Make sure that's what you're factoring. If not, something went wrong in your double distribution. Okay, show me how you're going to double distribute here. Here we go. Where everything came from. Okay, so what do you get? Okay, combine your like terms in the middle, and then what do you end up with? Okay, move everything over, get it equal to 0. Okay, so 2 numbers that multiply to negative 12, but add to 1 at the end. Two numbers that multiply to negative 12 but add to 1. So start going through your list of numbers that give you 12 and how many are 1 apart, right? Number 2. And then that number 3, looking for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 20 but add to 1. Multiply to negative 20 but add to 1. So think about your numbers that multiply to 20 but could give you a 1 somewhere. So we should have had 5 and -4. So our final answers are -5 and 4.
In your answer, do you always flip this sign?
Correct. Yep. Questions there? This, I'm not going to have you do number 4. All right, there was a reason why I didn't want you to go on to 4, because that's a different method than what we've been doing here the last 3 problems. And look, this is it. This is where you got to live for me. That's it. I'm not asking for all the other different methods you had last year. Multiply to C, add to B. That's all you need to do for me. So if you're struggling with this, get in here for help so we can go through a bunch of problems. That is the only way I'm going to have you guys factor this year. Okay, multiply to C, add to B. That's it. Any questions right now before I flip it on you a little bit? All right, take a look at the next one. First, real quickly, there's a vocabulary word up there that maybe you saw last year and totally don't remember anymore. Roots. Solve the roots. I'm just looking for the answer. That's a fancy way of saying, hey guys, can you find the solution, the value of X for me? All right, so that's just the solution. Good news. I cross multiplied for you. I did all the multiplying and I set it equal to 0 for you. So I just need your help factoring, I guess. All right, that's what I need your help with, is factoring. So what are you looking for here? 2 numbers that do what? Let's talk. 2 numbers that add to 2, but at the same time multiply to -1. All right, so let's work as a group here. Let's put our heads together. Can we come up with those 2 numbers that multiply to -1 but add to 2? A lot of silence in here. A lot of silence. More silence. Nobody's coming up with the numbers, huh? That multiply to -1 and add to 2. Well, that's good because they don't exist. All right, if some of you were going to pull this on me, oh, wow, I'll just do +1 and +1 because that gives you 2. Yeah, but when I multiply them, it doesn't give me -1, right? These numbers do not exist, and that will happen to us. You go to factor, and you just cannot find the numbers that fit. So we need something else because I still need to solve it. And hopefully you were exposed to this last year. If you cannot factor, we go right to quadratic formula. I will provide this for you. You do not need to memorize it. Okay, on any test or quiz, you will always have this given to you. No need to memorize it, but you need to know how to use it. If you look in quadratic formula, how many variables do I have in there? 3, A, B, and C. Where do those values come from? The equation when you set it equal to 0. All right, there is an A value here, a B value, and a C value in your equation after you set it equal to 0. How to find the A? It's whatever's next to the number. No variables here. It is the number next to the squared term. So what's my number next to x squared here? 1. So A value is 1. B value we've talked about already today. That's the number in front of x, which is 2. And the C value is the number without a variable called your constant, which in our case is -1. Sign goes with it. And the other piece of good news, other than I'm going to always give you quadratic formula, is this can be done basically after you show me what you substitute in, you can go right to your calculator. But you have to show me what you're substituting in. All right, ready? X equals, let's go right to the formula. Anytime you plug in a number, I want to see it in parentheses. Negative. What's our B value? So I want to see that bad boy in parentheses, and I'll tell you why when we're done. Plus or minus. Square root. B value, again, I want to see the darn thing in parentheses. Squared minus 4, that doesn't need to go into parentheses, that's part of the formula. A, which is 1, put it in parentheses. And C, which is -1 in parentheses. Anytime you plug in a number, put it in parentheses. All over 2, parentheses, plug in your a value, 1. I need to see this. I need to see this. I can't just have you go right to the calculator. I need to see what you're plugging in. All right, let's go to the calc now. And you should be able to type this in all in one spot. All right, get your fraction up. You hit division. I have to hit it twice, but you hit division. All right, you ready? Negative, parenthesis, just like we wrote down, 2. All right, here's where the issue is going to be. You guys don't have a plus or minus button, unfortunately. So you got to make a choice. You either hit plus or you hit minus. But just know in your final answer, it's got to be written plus or minus. All right, so you got to make a decision. You either do plus or you do minus. So I'll do plus, sure. All right, square root, get that square root up. Parenthesis, 2 squared. I'm just typing in exactly as we wrote on the paper. -4, parenthesis, a value 1, parenthesis, c value, which was -1. All over on the bottom, 2 times a value, 1. And then you can just let the calculator do the work for you. Boom. Again, is your calculator going to give you plus or minus? No. Why does it give me plus? Because that's what I chose to use up here. But you have to remember when you write the final answer now. Here you go. Go back. What was it? -1? Right? Yep. -1. You have to remember to put the plus or minus in. Okay, your calculator's not going to do it. Square root of 2.
Would choosing plus or minus change your answer at all?
What's that?
Would choosing like plus or minus?
No, if you chose minus, it would just show a minus instead. That's it. It would just show a minus. Again, I know it's not a whole number like our last because we couldn't factor. That's why it's not a whole number answer. We couldn't factor. All right, let's do one more together, and I'll let you do the final one on your own. Just like factoring, you can't use quadratic formula unless it's equal to 0. So we need to get that equation equal to 0 first. So just like factoring, no quadratic formula until it's equal to 0. And I'm also going to suggest you put it in the correct order so you don't mess up the A, B, and C value. So move the 5x. So everyone, we have what? 3x squared minus 5x minus 1 equal to 0. Okay. Make sure it's in the correct order, right? So you don't mess up the A, B, and C. All right, what's your A here? Where are we going to plug in for A? Well, hold on, back up. My fault. This is on me. My bad. My fault. Why am I not trying to factor it, right? I should, if I'm going to do this, I want to try to factor it if I can first. Reason being, what's the A value? 3. If it's not 1, you can't do the multiply and add to, like we did for the last 3 problems. All right, so if it's not a 1 here, there's no way you're going to factor it. All right, we go right to quadratic formula. All right, I always want you to try to factor first, but we can't here because the A value is not 1, it's 3. How about your B value? -5, and the C value? -1. So x equals, ready? Watch, negative, right? Because that's part of the formula. And then what am I going to put in parentheses? The B value, -5. So I can type it just like that in the calculator. Plus or minus. Okay, substitute in with parentheses. That's all I ask. Anytime you substitute in a number, it gets a parenthesis. So it goes in that way in your calculator. -4. A value is 3. C value, -1. And again, all over, just not the rat, all over. 2, in parentheses, your A value, 3. All right, that's all I need to see when you use quadratic formula. And then hopefully you'll be able to type all that in. And don't forget your plus or minus at the end. 5 plus or minus square root of 37 all over 6. And then once you're done with that, all right, let's see if you can do it all from scratch now. All right from the proportion. Try to factor first. Do not go to quadratic formula unless you know you cannot factor it. All right, do not give up so easily. If you can't factor it, go to quadratic formula, but I want you guys to factor the thing first if you can. Set it equal to 0 when you're ready, and then see if you can multiply and add to your numbers. If you can't, then go to quadratic formula. If you can, factor it. Can you factor this one? Two numbers that multiply to 2 and add to 5? Ooh, I don't think those numbers exist either. So not factorable, so quadratic formula.